Have you ever been on a plane? Maybe hit a little turbulence? And thought, what's the worst that could happen? Well, for the passengers of Aloha Airlines Flight 243, that nightmare became a reality. This is the incredible true story of the day. A plane's roof was ripped off mid-flight, and how, against all odds, most of them lived to tell the tale. It was April 28, 1988. A beautiful, clear day in Hawaii. Aloha Airlines Flight 243 was making a routine inter-island hop from Hilo to Honolulu. On board were 89 passengers and 6 crew members. The flight was short, only about 35 minutes, something these passengers and crew had done countless times. The Boeing 737, nicknamed Queen Liliuokalani, had been in service for 19 years. A workhorse of the island skies, the first part of the flight was completely normal. The plane took off without a hitch and climbed towards its cruising altitude of 24,000 feet. Passengers were chatting, flight attendants were preparing the drink service, and the pilots were running through their standard procedures. Up in the cockpit were Captain Robert Schornsteimer, an experienced pilot with thousands of flight hours, and First Officer Madeline Mimi Tompkins, who was relatively new to the 737 but a capable pilot. About 23 minutes into the flight, as the plane leveled off, a small crack appeared in the fuselage just above the first-class cabin. No one noticed it at first, but under the immense pressure difference between the inside and outside of the aircraft at that altitude, that tiny crack was a ticking time bomb. Suddenly, without any warning, there was a loud bang, a sound that passengers later described as a whoosh or a boom. In an instant, a huge section of the aircraft's roof and upper fuselage, an 18-foot-long chunk of metal, peeled away like the lid of a tin can. The cabin experienced explosive decompression. Imagine Italiano. 1 second, you're in the calm, pressurized environment of an airplane cabin. The next, you're exposed to the raw, freezing, thin air of 24,000 feet, with 300-mile-per-hour winds roaring through the plane. Debris, personal belongings, and cabin fixtures were sucked out into the sky. The noise was deafening, a chaotic symphony of wind, screaming and tearing metal. For the passengers, it was pure terror. They were strapped to their seats, looking up at nothing but blue sky. The wind was so strong, it was nearly impossible to breathe. The temperature plummeted to well below freezing. Oxygen masks dropped, but many were immediately ripped away by the gale force winds. In the midst of this chaos, the flight attendants became heroes. Clarabel Sambario Lansing, the chief flight attendant, was standing near the 5th row when the decompression happened. Tragically, she was immediately swept out of the aircraft. Her colleagues, Michelle Honda and Jane Satotomita, were knocked to the floor. Honda suffered a severe concussion and lacerations. Satotomita was also seriously injured, with shrapnel embedded in her arm and head. Despite their own injuries and the sheer terror of the situation, they focused on the passengers. They crawled up and down the aisle, which was now a treacherous landscape of sharp metal and debris, holding on to passengers, reassuring them, and trying to help them brace for what was to come. One passenger recalled seeing a flight attendant crawling on her hands and knees, her clothes shredded by the wind, telling everyone to stay calm and keep their seatbelts on. Up in the cockpit, the pilots were fighting for their lives and the lives of everyone on board. When the roof blew off, the cockpit door was torn away. Captain Schornsteimer looked back and saw what he later described as blue sky, where the first-class ceiling had been. The controls were sluggish and the plane was yawing and rolling violently. Communication was nearly impossible over the roar of the wind. First Officer Mimi Tompkins was at the controls at the moment of the explosion. The sudden decompression threw the plane into a sharp left bank. Her training kicked in. She immediately took control, disengaged the autopilot, and started a rapid but controlled emergency descent. They needed to get to a lower altitude, fast, where the air was breathable and the temperature was warmer. Captain Schornsteimer took over the controls, fighting to keep the damaged aircraft stable. He declared an emergency, broadcasting a mayday to air traffic control. But the wind noise was so intense that the controllers could barely understand him. All they heard was a garbled message about rapid decompression. The pilots had a critical decision to make. Where could they land this crippled bird? The nearest airport was on the island of Maui at Kahului. It was a race against time. The structural integrity of the plane was a complete unknown. Would the wings stay on? Would the floor collapse? Every second they were in the air, they risked the entire aircraft breaking apart. Captain Schornsteimer skillfully guided the plane towards Maui, descending as quickly as he dared. First Officer Tompkins handled communications and ran through emergency checklists. She had to shout at the top of her lungs to be heard over the wind. They managed to lower the landing gear, but they weren't sure if the nose gear had deployed correctly because the indicator light was broken. As they approached the airport, the situation was still dire. They were coming in much faster than normal because the damaged plane was harder to control at low speeds. Emergency services on the ground were scrambled, preparing for the worst-case scenario. For the passengers, these 13 minutes from the explosion to the landing felt like an eternity. They held hands with strangers, prayed, and braced for impact, all while staring at the open sky above them. Then, a miracle. Captain Schornsteimer and First Officer Tompkins managed to line up the crippled 737 with the runway at Kahului Airport. The landing was rough, but the plane held together. As the tires screeched on the tarmac, a collective wave of relief washed over the cabin. They had made it. They were on the ground. Emergency crews were stunned by what they saw. It wasn't just a hole in the plane. It was as if the entire top half of the forward cabin had simply vanished. It was a convertible airplane. They immediately began evacuating the injured. Of the 95 people on board, 65 were injured, 8 of them seriously. But incredibly, aside from the tragic loss of flight attendant C.B. Lansing, every single person survived. The investigation that followed uncovered some shocking truths. The cause of the incident was metal fatigue. The aircraft had operated for 19 years in a coastal, salt-air environment, which accelerated corrosion. The constant cycle of pressurization and depressurization on the many short flights it made each day had weakened the fuselage. The lap joints that held the aluminum skin panels together had failed due to widespread fatigue cracking. The Aloha Airlines Flight 243 incident became a watershed moment for aviation safety. It led to sweeping changes in how airlines and regulators approach aircraft maintenance, especially for aging fleets. New directives were issued for rigorous inspections of older aircraft, specifically looking for the kind of metal fatigue that brought down Queen Lily. The story is a testament to the incredible skill and composure of the flight crew. Captain Schornsteimer and First Officer Tompkins displayed extraordinary airmanship under unimaginable pressure. The surviving flight attendants, Michelle Handa and Jane Satotomita, showed immense bravery and dedication to their passengers despite their own serious injuries. Today, the fuselage of Aloha Airlines Flight 243 stands as a powerful, silent reminder of that fateful day. It's a story of catastrophic failure, but also one of incredible human resilience, courage, and survival against all odds. It reminds us that even when the sky falls in, the strength of the human spirit can help us find our way back to the ground. Thanks for watching. If you found this story as incredible as I did, please hit that like button and subscribe for more tales of survival and aviation history. Fly safe,